to HashMaps and see how Java does things. Well, as we look, there it is, my tutorials. I have to make sure I don't give you the answer to the solution to the assignment, right? So fruit hash map is the tutorial. There it is, fruit hash map. I don't know what my hash map is. That must be something else doing for something else. All right. So a hash map is not built in to the standard library. All programming languages have a standard library of things that are included automatically. And why do you suppose they don't include everything you're ever going to use?
Too many resources.
Too many resources and too many files. You just add what you need. So we use HashMap to use the hash maps. We add scanners so we can get things from the keyboard. So far, so good. All right, well, look at this. Does this kind of look like sort of something we were doing in C++? Does this look kind of like what we're doing with arrays and Java? Sort of? Kinda. So when you see something with new in it, and you see new in it, new indicates that you're creating an object. So for instance, when we're using the scanner to get things from the keyboard, we're creating a new scanner object with the default system input. And the default system input on any computer is going to be, what's the default system input on the computer? Jess was just using hers. Keyboard is the default system input. That's why it says system.in, and automatically it's looking for the default system input. When we do cin.get in C++, same thing. When we do input in Python, same thing. It goes to the default input. If we want input for something else, like a joystick, we have to do different things to capture that input. But by default, all computer operating systems use the keyboard as the default input. Even when you're doing your phone, you still have a keyboard that even though it's kind of a virtual pokey keyboard, that's still the default input system in for your phone, because guess what? This is programmed in Java, and it's built on the Linux operating system. Android is an offshoot of the Linux operating system. And these phones are programmed in Java. That's what you use when you're programming with the Android development kit. You use Java. That's the SDK, Standard Development Kit. We're using the JDK here, the Java Development Kit. When you develop for any language, there's a development kit. When you install Python, you get the development kit. All these words are all things that, as you go, should be just tripping off your tongue and your brain without any problem. Okay, moving on. So when we declared an array, we had one data type. And how many data types do we have in this?
2.
Why do we need 2?
Key value pair.
Key value. I don't know how I can get that stuff to stop coming up. So hash map is the class. The hash map needs string and integer as an input. It's a parameter to tell Java how to create a hash map. So this is just like when we've created our own classes, this is the same thing. This is just no difference other than this class is part of Java, and the classes we create are ones we create, but it's the same idea. So we need input of a string and an integer. Well, we're saying hash map, string, integer. This is going to be the types of variables that we put in there. It does seem a bit redundant to have it twice, but I will say that that is just how it works. So the little parenthesis means we're using the default constructor for hash map. So this is shaped just like the classes that we've been building. And this is the name of if this is the class, then my map is the object, or instance is another term that you might use, but object is what we've been primarily using. So you're creating a new object, or you're instantiating or creating an instance of my map, which is one Rudolph out of your cookie cutters, and you can make as many hash maps as you want. And then it's the same thing here. Scanner is a class, system.in is a parameter. It's it's coming into the default constructor, and we create a scanner object. And we know what character is. A character is a single character. All right, we know how to print. So enter a fruit name to add, scanner.next. And then we enter the quantity for the fruit. We get it into our integer. And because we are not indexed, how many items can we put in our hash map?
A lot.
A lot, as much as you want. It expands. It just depends on how many times you want to put something in. Right, so it dynamically expands. For an array list, once you say it's 10, you're done. It's 10. I'm sorry, a list. Sorry, an array, a tuple, and an array are statically whatever size you say. A list in Python, an array list here, and a vector in C++, you can make them as big as you want. The reason we sometimes use arrays and stuff and tuples and arrays in C++ is there's way less overhead for the programming and operating system to run it. When we're doing something that can be wiggly, it has to have more overhead to keep track of how big is it. Whereas if we say it's 10, 10 is a constant, it's not going to change. Whenever we vary something with a variable, we have more overhead to keep track of stuff. So now we have a my map, and I can keep adding as many things as I want. And now this is interesting. Where I'm looping through it as I'm adding things in to show what's in there. In a GUI interface, it would just show on a list. So what the heck is going on here? What kind of a loop is this? We talked about it Tuesday, yeah. And C++ has one of these. Python has one of these. Java has one of these. What kind of a loop is this? There's no counters. It's a for next loop. It's one of the terms. For each, for next, yes. For each entry in the my map, we're going to get that particular key. So my map is and I mentioned this on Tuesday, it's an iterable, meaning it has built-in method to go through it one at a time. You don't, just like an array has the same thing, an array list, all of our structures are iterables, meaning we don't have to count through them. They have built-in prop methods that'll allow us to go through each one until we get to the end and then we quit. So that would be called an iterable. So now we know what the entry gets us the key, and I don't know why it's called key set, but I guess it's an entry in the set of keys. So it goes through one at a time, and then we print out the entry value, and then notice here, this is kind of just like Python, isn't it? .get. So we get the corresponding value from this key value pair. And once you get past all the curly braces and all the parentheses and all the extra goop, this is no different than a Python list. Python dictionary, sorry. Now, when we get to HashMaps and C++, yeah, there'll be more typing, but it's the same idea. And do we want to add more fruit? Uh-oh, what did I do here? Why do I have this next character at and all this business?
Because if they type yes.
Well, if they type the word yes.
You can just get the character at the index 0 of the string.
Because a string is we've just been talking about them. A string is actually a list, or it's a list, yeah. So you can think of a string as a list because you can work with a string just like you do a list. You can chop it up into pieces. And if we just get the first character, hopefully they typed in capital Y or capital or Y, and hopefully they typed in N or a capital N because we prompted them for that. If they do type in yes, we don't care. We're just going to get the first character, and people will look at a lowercase and they'll type in uppercase. So that's why I did the two lowercase here, so that we have apples to compare to apples and we don't end up with oranges. Because my loop is saying, while add more equals to Y, well, why can I get away with just using a lowercase y? Why don't I compare to upper and lowercase? Because no matter what they type in, I just have to compare lowercase. And it doesn't matter what else they type in. If they type in X, it's going to exit. But this is very common in command line programs to have an end for I'm done, let's get out of here. Or X for exit. It's common. And then we're done. And then we print out the inventory the same way we did before. It's just a thing of beauty. It's just a bunch of extra characters to type in, but it works just like apple. We have 23 apples, and see, it does my little inventory. Do I want to add more fruits? Sure. Let's add a pear. I like pears. We'll have a bunch of pears. And so each time it iterates the dictionary. So when you're working at a command line, you're going to quite often loop through and show people what are in there because you don't have the graphical interface that can update automatically. So in a command line program, you have to do it. Remember, we would do this in our SQL programs so that we knew what we had entered in. Well, hopefully you remember that. Make sense?
Mhm.
All right, and let's close because I think that was good.